Thank you for joining a conversation with Joe Caruso. And now your host, Joe Caruso.
Oh, I forgot. I fell asleep for a second. Hi. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it very much. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for joining. Again, thanks for the comments. Thanks for suggestions. Thanks for everything. We love interactivity. That's why at the end we leave time for questions. And today is a good day for questions because we have a really interesting guy. His name is James Reid. This James, do you mind if I just go like this?
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. This guy enters into a world, it's brutal world of employment attorney. Very difficult. You're always either fighting litigation or preventing litigation, or I mean, it's just not a fun, or helping and protecting employees and trying to find the right balance as everything changes every year. Difficult, very difficult job. And this guy continues every year to get hired by like 20% more companies. I'm an entrepreneur, 20% more companies every year because he's that good at what he does. So we're going to talk just like I talk with clients, and like we actually had lunch in when I, clients or anything or friends, but it was a wonderful lunch and I consider you a friend immediately. So we're going to kind of explore how that mind works and how we approach our work. And that's the fun part of a conversation with Joe Caruso. And thanks, Mike. And James, with that, high bar I just established,
It's a very high bar. Yeah, my mind's spinning. I'm thinking about the Queen's Gambit series I just saw with all the inside someone's mind and way of thinking. And you got me thinking about mental health. The idea is to surround yourself with great people that bring you up and get you thinking and have positive energy. So I surround myself with everyone's problems and issues. So I guess I'm fortunate to still be a happy guy.
How do you, now this is part of what I call co-creation. Many people talk about what was on TV last night or whether their dog eats bones. I'm more interested in someone's mind, and these are the conversations I love to have. And this is why I work with clients. How do you not bring those? I'll expose. I'm dealing with people's personal issues and business issues, and we're talking about nothing small all day long. And then my wife says, "What's for dinner?" And I cook. Did I get to the store? I got it. How do you not bring them home?
That's a great question, especially because my wife is a lawyer that was in a similar area of law. Really, I'm fortunate enough to have kids that jump on me. And
how old do we have to know?
Yeah, so James V is 7, and my daughter will be turning 11 on Saturday. And
that's cool. So they're not like 35.
Exactly.
Jumping on you at 35, I don't care how many races you run, not going to go well.
Not going to go well. So what I've done always, even despite the COVID era, is I've always done work at work and home at home. And that's how I know to turn it on and off. So I've never worked remotely before.
Okay, hold on. Are you remote right now?
No, I'm in the Ann Arbor office and my kids and family are at home.
Okay. And so you go to, unlike me, I'm in my house. You go to work and then you come home.
I've never logged in at home before. Correct.
And when you wake up in the morning, now I do a lot of reflection in the morning. I meditate and then I reflect. and I think about my day, and I think about what I can bring to it that might be different from yesterday. And I try to stay in my own personal space as long as I can before I think about my checklist. I'm a big 5x7 pad guy, old school. I write down what I gotta do and who I gotta call him, you know. How do you keep that space? Now, I want to clarify a little bit more. There's a sacred space between when you're falling asleep and when you sleep, and between when you are asleep and you wake up. And that, I call it sacred. I don't mean anything religious by that. I just mean that's your time to think. Otherwise, you're in your day. You're in your day. You're in your day. How do you use that time, James? And if that's something you don't use, then just say that.
As soon as I wake up, I usually do a 2-hour bike ride. And I've never listened to music during that bike ride. That's my time to think and just not, focus on, my thoughts and not really being into work, just kind of my recharging, reflection, thinking. And then every day I always do chess tactics, like a puzzle, just to see how sharp my brain is at finding a solution to a problem. I do about 10 of those every single day, and that is my routine.
I'm fascinated by this concept. Joe Lichtenberg, he died at 95, world famous psychoanalyst, dear friend, we traveled the world. He said, life's a puzzle. Everything's a puzzle. Wrote 35 books. I'm lucky enough to be one of the contributors to the last one. But the other thing I was thinking about was Thoreau. Thoreau said, sometimes as I idly sit on Walden Pond, I cease to live and begin to be. But he walked. And Einstein walked. And it was through this physical movement that they were able to focus on what they were. That's what one of the reasons people exercise, not all of them, just one. And when you're lost in that physical movement, your mind is freed because it's somewhat focused. It's almost a part of how to create a meditative state. And so use bikes. Interesting. And then you network. So how do you go from like, all right, I'm alone right now. I cherish this. I love this. This is great. Got my family, my kids jumping on me in the bed. And that's what a cool thing. And then, your house and your accomplishments and kind of celebrating your success and your lovely relationship with your wife, whom I know you love. And why don't these things compete? Because then you got to go network.
So that bucket is also separate. So I don't drink at work. I don't drink at home. We don't even have any beer at home at all. So I consider networking as like a completely separate part of my day, where that's where I drink, have the bar food, and develop relationships. And even though I have fun at times, I consider that a portion of work.
Interesting distinction. Lots there. So tell us about your business.
So on my business, 15 years ago, I thought litigation, making arguments.
Can I ask publicly how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 41 years old.
Okay.
And
you don't look a day over like 56. 6.
You know, the law
And he
does
says that with
age
all this
you, and-
hair, you know, this guy, you know.
To tell you the truth, I'm glad I have a receding hairline, because the older you look,
Is
the
that receding? I would love receding. Receding would be good.
the older you look,
I'm retreating.
the more credibility I think you can naturally build on a first impression before talking.
Huh. How do you design a first impression without being okay? I believe there's a person and a persona. Now we all have to have our persona if we're in some business. You know, I got to hit the stage, 10,000 people. I have to be a guy, whatever the guy they want, but it has to be me. So
Yes.
can we blend, as was said by the great poet, two eyes are one in sight, avocation, vocation. Can you have a persona and a person, and how do you do that? I know so many lawyers who have their sense of humor trained out of them. That's why I like you. You didn't, but it's part of the process.
Yeah, I think to me, if we could all see between 0 and 100 how much we can trust somebody, that would solve a lot of problems and break down a lot of barriers.
I've never heard anybody say that. How do you determine that?
So step one, I think people that know me in 5 minutes know that I have that passion or that fire in my belly to want to win. So they know that I'm not gonna just take their case and whatever happens, happens. I probably want to win more than they do. And I think they realize that. So then the second part of that is credibility and having the competency and skill set to achieve the results that they want. And that is a harder challenge to do, but by publishing articles, doing presentations, and getting client testimonials and results, or it used to be, you know, give me your $1 million litigation, give me a chance. That was not working. The way to get in is get in smaller. Let me just talk through one employment problem that you have and see what you think. So instead of going for the home run, I wanted, just let me do a first base, you know, trial at bat, see what happens. If you like it, come back. If not, didn't cost you anything. So I changed my practice from litigation pit bull to preventative. Give me a chance at something on the front end, and let's grow our relationship organic.
One of the things I've taught for years, I wrote about in my book. I think I should touch on this in my next book too. My next book's called, my last one was Power of Losing Control. Next one's Quintessential Leadership. But I wrote about trust is given before it occurs. So the conception of trust is when it's given. Now, parents love to say, I'll trust you when you earn it. Trust still doesn't exist till it's given. And for you to be able to look at a client and say, how can I help you? That's something I've done my whole life. What keeps you up at night? What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you doing? How does where you're going and what you're doing and how your behavior works take you away from what you want? I was writing today about how much time do I have? Oh boy, it goes fast with you, baby. I was writing today about associative learning. Now, it's not that complicated. But there was a guy named Pavlov, and that might ring a bell in some people's minds, and that might be the shittiest joke they've ever heard. Can I say shitty? It's my show.
I'm salivating right now.
But he was going to be a Russian Orthodox priest like his father. And he decided that didn't work for him. Who knows? That's a second. I know a friend that was going to do that. So I know that's a process that, wow, it's difficult. and takes incredible commitment and brains, and became a biologist or a scientist. Let's just say scientist. I don't know what the terms are in Russia. And the first one to win a Nobel Prize for his work. Now, his work was on stomachs in the digestive system. But even in Russia, which is hard to believe, you couldn't do it on humans. You know, you had to do it on dogs. That was okay, you know. So he's doing this work and he recognizes something. And one of my friends, I'm going to go to another side story, and the folks listening, if you track the stories, I'll go to 35,000 feet and I come down. This is how I teach. It's just what I do, because we learn from narrative and association to idea. So he finds out the dogs salivate. Now, one of my friends, he had a radiation accident. Won't go into the details, but he lost his ability to create saliva. If you can't create saliva, you can't taste food. I didn't know this. I learned this 10 years ago from him, because he couldn't taste food. So Pavlov figured out when the dog salivates, because he brought this meat powder into a room and put, I think, water on it, but I'm making that part up. That's deduction. To make it smell, they'd salivate. So what's a scientist? A scientist is about hypothesis and improving the hypothesis over time, repetitive experimentation. And he found out if he touched the dog's, let's say, paw, we don't know, it's a little vague, but we think about the belly, right? Because that was the demonstrative thing that he used later. The dog would salivate, bring the food, touch the paw, bring the food, touch the paw, connect them. That's called associative learning, which is what I teach. You can't have an idea in your mind exclusive of any other idea. It has to attach to something. Connection creates meaning, which is in my new book in a huge way. And then he said, what if I take the food away? And he found out the dog would salivate to the connective idea that it had. So we associate idea to idea. That's what we do. And it was the beginning of the understanding of psychology to behavior. In America, the father of psychology is William James, but he was actually the scientist that did that. Freud, you know, he did eels, not dissimilar. Freud was not there were no psychiatrists or psychoanalysts, they're biologists and scientists. So when I ask clients about outcome, what's going on in your life? What do you want? Where are you? I have to understand how they think and what they associate with what to make a decision. And when you change your mind to become the, what you call a litigational pit bull, to becoming a guy that gives trust and says, I'll just help you with this, no problem. And you became a relationship guy, which is why you're the #1 lawyer. #1, I mean, like, you have more clients than anybody in your business in that particular practice, because you get the relationship part of it. You give trust. And you just said from 0 to 100%, how do I know if somebody's a bad guy? That's a difficult decision if you don't trust. So you have to trust first. but you have to be smart enough to know I can protect myself. What time in your life did you get to know I'm not vulnerable? I can protect myself.
I learned these lessons through sports at an early age. And, there's cheaters in every single sport and different tricks in games and personalities. And you learn how to not get tricked anymore. It's kind of like the poker saying, if you look around and can't see who the poker, the worst player is or the cheater, it's probably you as the worst player.
I didn't know that.
You have to be able to assess everybody and learn that skill set. And if you can't assess the weaknesses on each team and whatever sport you're playing and the people, you're not probably the most qualified person on that field.
Huh. I'm going to go completely vulnerable here. How did you assess me to even give me the time to do this? Because you're not doing this to get business.
I see your passion, and I learned enough about you to see that the life-changing experiences you had at age 18 involving testicular cancer got you thinking about a bigger meaning in life than just how to make a dollar or just how to, live a normal life. You started thinking about bigger things like a philosopher, and I can see your passion and your heart where you're easy to trust. And I think by people that say things that aren't too generic, vanilla, and fake, you build trust by saying some extreme stories and examples, because if you didn't believe them, you wouldn't be able to take out that story or train of thought as far as you are.
That's very interesting, heartening, and thank you. It's lovely to hear. You can keep talking all day as far as I'm concerned about that. Love me more, love me more. No, but what I'm thinking is you can be passionate and angry, or you could be passionate and want to help people with no agenda. Just bring your passion to them. And that's what I heard you say about what you do. Let me help you solve your problem. I'll show you my value. I'll show you my skill set. And then if you want to continue a relationship, we'll continue it. And that's the core, I think, of your business. Now, I'm so I'm so frigging, that's the word that was going to come out, but I mispronounced it. Excited about our call, and I like you. I'm curious, and I like myself when I'm with you, which is far more important to any relationship, as I wrote about in my last book. But I know we've got questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Mike because we only have 6 minutes. And is there anything else you want to say before we go to a question?
I'm ready for questions. Just thank you. I appreciate how you got my wheel spinning.
Isn't that fun?
It's fun.
Isn't it fun when your mind works for you? Because guess what? It's not your best friend. I would say the mind's a terrible thing. You got to understand how it works, like Pavlov in associative learning. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to Mike, the producer. Mike Patchetaw, what do we got? I have no idea.
We've got a question that came in through email that says, how has the lawyer or law practice mindset changed during COVID? Are they friendlier or nicer to deal with than typical lawyers prior to COVID?
Whoa, so it's a qualified question that you have a false choice on. I'll start with that, attorney.
Okay.
Which you respect because that's an attorney response.
Well, I also try to not just talk legal talk, but understand the gist of the question. And the answer is, I would say across the board, people are more vulnerable than they've ever been before. It's okay to say you're depressed and stressed and have anxiety and are bothered or upset, more so than ever before. So the clients are nicer because they're more human and real when they're calling me.
Yeah, we really discovered our vulnerability in an equal way. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And what we don't want to do, unless we're a control freak, we don't want them to identify by the vulnerability. Cancer didn't define me. It just happened to me. If I let it define me, I was a victim to it, and then I'm vulnerable the rest of my life. Then how do I live? How do I create what my mind is capable and my own special, abilities are able to create? I have to have some confidence in myself. So vulnerability, critical. Otherwise, egoist and all the other things that go with it. Understanding vulnerability is really important. Helps you put on sunscreen, for God's sake.
And it also goes back to our original discussion of trust. When someone shows me that, I naturally trust them more because they didn't have to share that with me.
Very fair point. Very fair point. Mike, do we have anything else? I know we only have 3 minutes.
We have another question that says, my son is thinking about becoming a lawyer. After COVID, what area of becoming a lawyer would you recommend?
Obviously, I'm biased.
Surgery.
But I can tell you that I've lived through, the 2008 downturn, and I've lived through, COVID, and also great times as well. And employment law is busy in a good or bad economy. You're either training, developing, leading, or you're right-sizing companies and dealing with layoffs and employment issues.
You can't be conflict avoidant. You have to be a problem solver. If you're not a problem solver, I talked to somebody today, they have an HR person. I work with CEOs. They have an HR person that says, I have never had a lawsuit brought against any of my companies. I'm like, you're not that good. Because sometimes you fight for what's right.
That's right. Yeah,
Sometimes
conflict is necessary.
Yeah. And sometimes you negotiate. And negotiation isn't always compromise. Sometimes it's just reason. Voltaire, the age of reason. Yeah, excellent. Mike, I know we're up against time. What else can we do? You're the producer. And by the way, James, I'm not letting this go. This was one of the most fun conversations with Joe I've had. You really brought it, man. Thanks.
Oh, no, thanks. Thank you. And I'm glad you're unscripted and just say what you feel. It means a lot.
No script, ever. Always relationship. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us for a conversation with Joe Caruso. The next conversation with Joe Caruso is with Michelle Hecken. Michelle Hecken will be Wednesday, July 28th at 3 p.m. We also have Darius Marishazadat. Oh my gosh, I kill his name every time. July 20th at 2 p.m. And we look forward to having you both, having everyone attend again. James, thank you very much for being our guest on A Conversation with Joe Caruso.
Always a pleasure. Till next time.